Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 12, The Perfect Society, 4 Spiritual Classes. Text 10. Kalpayit Vatmana Yadvat Kalpayit Vatmana Yadvad Abhasam idam ishvaraha Daitam tavana viramet Tato yasya viparya Kalpayit vatmana yadvad Abhasamidam ishvaraha Daitam tavana viramet Tato yasya viparya Kalpayit vatmana yadvad Abhasamidam ishvaraha Taitam tavana viramet Tato yasya viparya Tavana viramet Tato yasya viparya Kalpayitva, ascertaining positively. Atmana, by self-realization. Yadvat, as long as. Abhasam, reflection of the original body and senses. Idam, this, the body and senses. Ishvaraha, completely independent of illusion. Daitam, duality. Tadvat, for that long. Na, does not. Viramet, see. Tata, by such duality. He, indeed, asya, of the person. Viparya, counteraction. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As long as the living entity is not completely self-realized, as long as he's not independent of misconception, of identifying with his body, which is nothing but a reflection of the original body and senses, he cannot be relieved of the conception of duality, which is epitomized by the duality between man and woman. Thus, there is every chance that he will fall down because his intelligence is bewildered. Purport. Here is another important warning, that a man must save himself from attraction to women. Unless one is self-realized, fully independent of the illusory conception of the material body, the duality of man and woman must undoubtedly continue. But when one is actually self-realized, this distinction ceases. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Svapakecha Pandita Samadarshanaha. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater outcast. Bhagavad Gita 5:18. On the spiritual platform, The learned person not only gives up the duality of man and woman, but also gives up the duality of man and animal. This is the test of self-realization. One must realize perfectly that the living being is spirit, soul, but is tasting various types of material bodies. One may theoretically understand this, but when one has practical realization, then he actually becomes a pandita, one who knows. Till this time, the duality continues. And the conception of man and woman also continues. In this stage, one should be extremely careful about mixing with women. One should think himself perfect. No one should think himself perfect and forget the Shastric injunction that one should be very careful about associating even with his daughter, mother, or sister, not to speak of other women. Srila Madhvacharya cites the following shlokas in this regard. Bahudvainaiva vastunam yatartha jnanam uchate advaita jnanam ityetad dvaita jnanam tad anyata yata jnanam yatata vastus tata mati naiva jnanar tayor vedas tata ekatva vedanam. Unity and variety is real knowledge, and therefore giving up variety artificially does not reflect perfect knowledge of monism. According to the Achintya Bheda philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there are varieties, but all of them constitute one unit. Such knowledge is knowledge of perfect oneness. Kalpayidvatmana yadvat abasam idam ishvaraha dvaitam itavanna viramet tato yasya viparya. As long as the living entity is not completely self-realized, as long as he's not independent in the misconception of identifying with his body, which is nothing but a reflection of the original body and senses, he cannot be relieved of the conception of duality, which is epitomized by the duality between man and woman. Thus, there is every chance that he will fall down because his intelligence is bewildered. Namo Vishnuvadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatunde Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Siddhara. Here's a warning for all of us that we shouldn't try to act as if we're self-realized when we're not. We'll certainly get into difficulty. And self-realization doesn't mean we just take initiation and you become self-realized, or that there's some position you could obtain in management or even spiritual position that makes you self-realized. That's not how things work. Self-realization is a gradual process of focusing one's attention, giving one's love to Krishna. It doesn't depend upon any material or even official position, any managerial, any other official position. Depends upon one's absorption in Krishna consciousness and obtaining the mercy of Krishna and the previous acharyas. But the tendency to imitate is there in every conditioned soul. It's one of the things that go along with being a conditioned soul. It's called the propensity to cheat. To imagine oneself to be in some position that one actually isn't. And when we see others are acting in a position that they're not actually in, if they're superior to us in position, then we take it as an opportunity for us to also do the same thing. No one can blame me. I'm just following the authority. The question is whether the authority is following the actual authority. whether they're really on one level. They may be official authorities, but are they actually going to help us progress towards the goal of life? So here, it's very emphatic, Prabhupada is very emphatic, that the dealings between men and women should be very carefully handled. It's not that if men don't become intimately involved with women, then they're actually going to treat them less in a more disrespectful way. Actually, the opposite is there. If men are actually properly dealing with women, they'll become much more respectful of women. In the Vedic culture, women were considered to be mothers. Every lady, except for one's wife, was considered to be like a mother, and women were treated with great respect. Unlike nowadays, where they've been turned into prostitutes, practically speaking. Being sold as a commodity simply to gratify the whims of men who have uncontrolled senses. And this somehow or another is considered to be respecting women. But actually it's just exploitation. I remember being with Prabhupada when Prabhupada was explaining these things, which are not held, or sometimes in some circles, even within ISKCON, are not so much appreciated. Prabhupada said that actually men are just cheating the women. They say, we're all both equal, that we should just mix equally, and that everything should be free. And so the women mix freely, they get pregnant, and the man says, well, we're still equal. You take care of the kid, and I'm leaving. Because after all, we're all equal. No responsibility, no consideration, no knowledge, simply being in ignorance, because the man is thinking, the woman's thinking, either we kill the child. Prabhupada, when he was questioned about this is in the 70s, it was considered to be quite radical. When Prabhupada came to Dallas one year, I was there. I was the temple president, so I got a chance to be with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was just amazed by the answers these women reporters would ask, the questions they'd ask, and the answers they'd give. That, Swamiji, why do you think that men and women are not 100% equal? Why do you think that men are superior to women? Or different from women? So Prabhupada said, well, very simply, the man and woman, they get together, they have some intimate relationship, the lady gets pregnant, the man doesn't get pregnant, it's the lady that gets pregnant. And then the man leaves, and the woman has a choice, either kill the kid, kill the child, or try to seek welfare from the government. So Prabhupada said, is this a very good choice? To the woman reporter. And the woman reporter said, yes, that's her choice. So Prabhupada didn't try to further get into it because he realized he was dealing with people who are not necessarily have a civilized conception of life. What kind of choice is it? Either you kill the child, which because people have no conception of the law of karma, they think there's no problem. I kill the child and I don't get any reaction. They don't know they're going to have to take birth again in the womb of a mother and be repeatedly killed, just as they're killing the child and also be killed in the womb of the mother. And to take help from the government, which is encouraging such policies, the government doesn't have the interest of the people at heart. The governments in Kali Yuga are not trying to enlighten people. They're trying to put people in darkness. Because the people who are in control, if they were enlightened, then they wouldn't have such leaders. Because the leaders are simply different versions of less controlled animals than the followers are. Bigger animals, according to the Bhagavatam. Their only propaganda, their only interest, their only philosophy is how to increase eating, sleeping, mating, defending for themselves personally, and throwing a few, scraps to the followers so they don't devour them. So this kind of leadership is not very helpful for the actual spiritual progress of society. So the idea that we can have a whole society of Varna Sankar and there's no harm, we just have a lot of animals running around, but we can see, what do? They act like animals. People are surprised that the Varna Sankara, the animal like younger children, are acting like animals. They can't understand it. To give an example, all these video games that they play, they just get trained up that becoming insensitive to killing. They think everything is a video game. Even in reality, in the army, they just play video games, killing people. And when they get on the field, they think it's one big video game. They don't see the people they're killing, but they think, well, there's a little dot on the screen, let's eliminate it. There's another dot and just destroy it. And that's how they see the whole world, as just little dots that they're playing a video game with. So one little boy, he was playing video games all the time. So then the neighbor girl, he got into a fight with a neighbor girl, so he took his father's gun, just like he did in the video game, and shot her in the head. Eliminated another little part of the video game. Because people have been put into a virtual reality where the reality is also seems to them to be just a virtual reality. They can't connect, especially when they're younger, and as they get older too, as they're trained up from childhood to just see everything as a non-reality or a flexible reality according to their own vivid, fertile imagination, then things just simply deteriorate more and more. There's no standard, there's no reality, there's no soul, there's no karma, there's no reincarnation. It's all matter just swirling that you can do whatever you like with in your virtual reality or in your whatever reality you make up within your imagination. And there's no reaction. And as the governments degrade, as everyone degrades, then the reaction becomes less and less. You can do any abominable thing. And if you have the right connections, you just put a slap on the fist, you just put a slap on the wrist and you go on. Try to do it a little more secretly so you don't get caught. And where does it all start? It all starts in this unrestricted relationship between men and women. Prabhupada said women are good, the woman is good, the man is good, and often their combination is very bad because neither one of them is trained, or if one of them is trained, the other isn't trained. And therefore they take the whole idea of marriage or lack of marriage. Nowadays people don't bother getting married, they don't want to get committed. As I mentioned, one mother, her daughter was a devotee, is a devotee, and she was living with another devotee for almost 25 or 30 years. And they had 3 children. And one day this devotee couple decided to get married. So the lady, the woman devotee, went to her mother and said, "Guess what, Mom? We finally decided to get married." And the mother took her daughter's hand and said, "Are you sure he's the right man?" So this is the mentality of modern society. If you're going to make the inconceivable commitment of getting married after 30 years, then make sure you get married to the right person. After 30 years of living with someone, you may be wrong if you get married to them. Because after all, tomorrow your mind may change. You may want to live with another man, have another 3 sets of children. Therefore, nowadays, marriage has become simply an idea. If someone gets married once, twice, 3 times or more, it's not considered a problem. It's considered an experiment. And if there's some children, well, unfortunately, there's some children, do what you can with them, but just go on with your sense gratification. Therefore, the society is degrading more and more. People, they're growing up. Nowadays, children can't even go to school in many parts of the world. But that may not be a bad thing. But that doesn't mean necessarily they're getting any better education than they got before. Most of the children are learning from the television more than they go to school. The only chemistry you learn, the only two major subjects in colleges nowadays are biology and chemistry. Biology meaning searching for sense gratification, and chemistry means experimenting with different drugs and see what their effects are. Those are the two major subjects in college nowadays. And therefore, previously colleges were producing hippies, or the society was producing hippies, but now hippies are considered too moderate. They're too much in the mode of goodness or passion. They're not considered acceptable or worthy of attention. Now they've degenerated in some parts of the world to simply violence. Throwing bombs, getting into situations where they're just defying any kind of authority. And freely engaging in all kinds of sense gratification. Just like in America now, one state has legalized all intoxication, including heroin, cocaine, everything is legal. And this they consider progress. As I mentioned, even 25 years ago when I was in Denmark, one devotee came up, one headline in the newspaper was there, that now Sweden has become even more progressive, because in Sweden, in the headline it said, one father had married his son, and therefore one of the last obstacles for freedom was overcoming. So this seems rather strange to us, hopefully, rather just normal. But what was considered, just like Pariksha Maharaj, he saw someone was beating on a cow and a bull. A Shudra dressed as a king was beating on a cow and bull, religiosity. The mode of goodness. The Mother Earth and religiosity were being beaten, and he was amazed. Even the sages who heard his explanation was amazed. How could anyone attack a cow and a bull? And therefore, Pariksha Maharaj, as the head of society, he defended the cow and the bull. He was going to chastise the miscreant. But nowadays, if you do that, then you'll be arrested. Instead of the miscreant being arrested, you'll be arrested. You're interfering with the very basis of economic development in modern society, namely animal slaughter. You're trying to undermine the current economic system. Therefore, you're a criminal. So what was considered abominable 5,000 years ago is considered perfectly normal, not only normal, but is considered to be necessary for the advancement of society. What to speak of the relationships between men and women? Even 100 years ago, for a woman to engage in prostitution was considered to not be a very good occupation. But now they're legally licensed, and they're considered to be professionals in their occupation. So we're only beginning. Every kind of illicit sex is considered to be normal. Intoxication has been considered normal. Gambling has been considered normal. And killing animals, some people object to it, not because they're afraid of killing animals because of the soul or whatever else, the karma, the reaction. They have some sentiment. They don't mind killing the children. Just like there's a whole class of people who are vegans. They're against, mistreating the cow, but they're not against illicit sex and contraceptives and perhaps even abortions. They're not considering that as very significant. They don't mind killing their own children, but they don't want the cow to be mistreated. Another section of people, religious people, they considered abortion to be against God's will, but they are completely supporting animal slaughter. So it's very rare to find anyone who understands what the reality of the situation is, why there are so many trees and insects and bugs, where they come from, what kind of karma did they have in their last lifetime as a human being, and what present society is producing in terms of whether it's actually directing people properly by encouraging unrestricted, unlimited sense gratification, all fields of activities, or whether it's actually violent. It's destroying the violent against human beings by not properly educating them and misdirecting them towards the darkest regions of existence. Previously, there was one Shudra dressed as a king, and now there are unlimited numbers of Shudras pretending to be something that they're not and performing abominable activities. So the question is, who do we want to follow? Who's actually worthy of being followed? And if we follow Andaya Tandira Pigimas Manas, Tepisha Tantra Urudami Vara. What does it really mean to follow a blind person? And what does it mean? Naishamatis Tavadarukraman Green. What does it mean to follow a person who has vision? Can we, even our ISKCON society, can we think, oh, men and women have suddenly, by some inconceivable way, become equal? They should mix freely. Prabhupada, of course, allowed that to a certain extent, but the vision of the Bhagavatam is not that it should be perpetuated. It's a social thing in certain parts of the world that has evolved due to the degradation of society, and Prabhupada had to introduce the most important thing, which is the chanting of the holy name. But the chanting of the holy name, the idea is it should be purifying people so that gradually they can understand that they have to carefully deal with each other. Not only men with women, but men with men and women with women, and with the animals too, as Prabhupada points out, with everyone. We should be carefully dealing with them and acting with them as Krishna's instrument, as he wants us to do, not according to our senses and mind, how they're dictating to us. Otherwise, there's every possibility of going astray, because modern society is completely directing society towards the darkest regions of existence. And therefore, even some attempt to go in another direction will be met with criticism and opposition, et cetera, But if we just want to take it easy, we just want to go with the flow, we want to be socially recognized as good people according to their estimation, then we run the risk of going to hell ourselves along with everyone else. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments? So Lalit Govinda, what did you understand from the class? You can give him the microphone.
Hare Krishna. I hope that I understand.
What did you understand? What point did you think was important, or
that we have only real solution for ourselves and for others? Bhakti Yoga, because other things cannot help anyone. Just degrade it. So, but in practice, we must, develop faith in this process. And understand that we have a chance to save ourselves, like a soul, from this crazy world, how to say. No other chance. So this is my understanding.
Good. Okay. Nitai, what was your understanding? What did you get from the class, if anything?
That we have to be very careful with our dealings with every living entity, and because there is the modern society is so directed into the degrading ways that if we just go with the flow and take it easy, we are going to end up on the path to hell. And if we try even a little bit to go in other direction, we will be met with criticism, and people will oppose us.
Yes. So what should we do about that?
We should chant Hare Krishna. Yeah, Prabhupada. He brought this chanting of the holy name so that we will gradually uplift our consciousness and realize that we have to deal with everyone with great care and attention.
Okay. What about the people who are opposing us? How should we deal with them?
Well, I don't know.
What about tolerance?
Yeah, we should tolerate.
Yes, would you like to say something? Give her the mic.
I understand the most that all this sanctification leads society in hell, and the most important is how we associate. That is very important, the man and woman, because if it's all without religion and without principle, then we couldn't expect that the children will be good, and if children grow, and then it's worse and worse with people, because they don't raised in family with believe in God and have all these values, the values, and that we have to be very careful. And for other people, how to society, it's important to have tolerance and compassion, and maybe try to help them if they could accept, maybe prasadam, mahamantra, share, but important yet that we are an example and try the best in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes, Gadadhar Pandit.
Hare Krishna. This point was very significant to me, that if we are not acting as instruments of Krishna, that we are trying to uplift each other, to try to make each other more Krishna conscious, our dealings with others will simply be based on exploitation for our own sense gratification, and we will simply cause harm to ourselves and others by such dealings.
Thank you. Wow. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.